Hello there and welcome to the last video for 2024, and in this video Zeeebo's gonna end the year with a bang by talking about the top 10 best units of AFK Journey in 2024. So 10 units out of a pool of over 50 plus 60 units is kind of challenging, but I'm gonna set some benchmarks and disclaimers for this video so that we have a direction to follow, right? First of all, this is a video based on my personal opinions, so there will be some personal biases. If you guys don't like it, feel free to make your own videos about it. And secondly, this best unit list will be based on the performance of the units since their release to the current state of the game. So units which has been around for a longer time will have a better rating because they have more to show compared to some of the newer units itself. And then this best unit list will be judged based on meta relevancy, so I'm not going to judge a unit based on how big their booba is or how big their get is in terms of their aesthetic side of things. Strictly meta usage, meta relevancy, as well as how useful the unit is all around. And lastly, I'll be breaking down the achievements of the units so that some of the older viewers can see why some older units which might not be that prominent right now used to be really prominent since the start of the game or in the Song of Strife season itself. So without further ado, let us start with the units in the 10th slot, and we have none other than Sonia. So I'm giving Sonia the 10th position because Sonia is relatively new to the game, but she has already proven herself to be one of the best buffers in the game with really decent semi-carrying potential. So being able to buff 2 units means that you are able to buff 2 carries with herself to make a tri-core team, and this unit is seeing a lot of use right now across multiple different PvE contents as well as even your PvP teams itself. So I'll say Sonia right now is in this rising star category for season 3, and I do think that she's actually going to be really good in the early game for the next season itself, and that's why I'm giving her in the 10th spot for her current meta relevancy in terms of how strong she is, as well as how commonly used she is, as well as her potential to be one of the best unit in the upcoming season itself. So that's for Sonia in the 10th slot. Now moving upwards in the 9th slot, to be really honest, I think 10 slots is really challenging because there's so many good units all around, but I decided to give Shakir the 9th slot because Shakir has always been this unit that sort of remains relevant, right, across multiple different seasons, right? At the start, you use Shakir as a Dream Realm unit at the very start of the game. You use Shakir in PvP teams to counter Irons in general as an anti-control tool, and you use Shakir as a buffer for the Lupai Aura buff across the different state of the game, right, across all the different seasons itself. So like Shakir hasn't really been like this top tier most meta units that you would think of, but he has always been seeing some sort of use from the start to the present, and that showcases his longevity, right, in terms of his usage itself. So he was and is still one of the core piece of most melee teams in general because of how powerful he is as an aura buffer as well as semi-carry, and has maintained relevancy both in the PvP side as well as PvE side. So despite him being not the king of the meta, hasn't really dominated the meta on his own, but because of his relevancy as well as how useful he is across all the different game modes, I'm giving him the number 9 slot for the best unit of 2024. So moving upwards, we go to the number 8 slot. So okay, I think Iron is gonna be a unit where I think the newer players will be like, what the hell, why is this unit here? Because like I think Iron right now in the Waves of Intrigue season isn't actually seeing that much of a use as compared to his usage in the past itself. But that's why I included the achievements category, because Iron was released on the start of the game, right? He was the king of the game from the start all the way to like somewhere in the middle of the Song of Strife season. Like he was the king of the meta before being slowly fizzled out after the introduction of the likes of Lily May as well as Danlia and all the anti-control mechanics in this season, such as the Mola fractional talent as well as units that just outright gives control immunity like Hugin itself. So this unit has slowly fizzled out in Waves of Intrigue season, and if the next season is still going to be like sort of anti-control by nature, Iron might not be seeing that much of a use, but just based off his past performance as well as past dominance at the start of the game before the game got released on the global server, as well as for most part of the Song of Strife season, I'm giving Iron the number 8 slot because he actually shaped the meta around him for a really long time. So that's for Iron, number 8. And then moving upwards, we have number 7. So I think for most of the Waves of Intrigue characters, I didn't give them higher than number 5. And Hark is actually the highest from the Waves of Intrigue season. And as you guys can see, Sonia and Hark, they're both released in the 3rd quarter of Waves of Intrigue. So they are really relevant, right? But Hark right now is one of the most meta warping carry in the game and also the strongest physical attacker to date. So these are the main achievements of this unit. And this unit has been dominating the meta ever since it got released. And I don't think it's slowing down, at least from the physical side of things. So this unit will probably still be relevant moving forward, and it's probably going to be a unit that we should always look out for both on the PvE side as well as the PvP side. So the only reason why he's not higher is because he's really new. Despite dominating the meta right now, he's not like super duper dominant across long periods of time, and that's why I can only give him the top 7 spot. So that's Hark. And then moving upwards, we have top 6, Raina. So Raina, contrary to Hark earlier, I think this unit has dominated the meta for quite a while. On the support side, it has been one of the most relevant Dream Realm characters ever since this unit's inception because of the massive debuff potential. So this unit was always the most recommended Hypogean unit to build for most beginners. I think if you guys have been watching my videos from the past to the present, it will always be Raina to M+, followed by the other Hypogean characters. So this unit is still very relevant despite having more replacements right now. But despite this unit slowly falling off, I'll say at least on the bossing side of things, I'll say Raina will always be one of the strongest offensive PvP units, because if you're able to get dynamic balance off and you have the team to break the opponent's formation, this unit can be used on the PvP side. Right, so this unit is good both on the PvP as well as the PvE side and has always remained relevant to this date from the start of release. So that's why I'm giving him the number 6 slot. So if Raina's in the number 6 slot, I think you guys probably can see like where this is going in terms of the top 5 itself. They're going to be the best units, they're going to be the most seen units, and they're going to be the most meta dominant unit across long periods of time. And moving to the 5th slot, we're going to talk about Mikola right here. So Mikola was released in the 4th quarter of Song of Strife season, and she has dominated the meta in the support side ever since her release across multiple different game modes, especially the Dream Realm side of things. And being the most flexible buffer that doesn't require her to be around to be buffing the team itself makes her really helpful, especially when you combine her with the likes of Hark over Smokey, right? Because you need most of the buffers to be on the battlefield to fully buff your team. But for Mikola's case, nope, you don't need her alive. You can eat her up with Hark and then continue to offer the attack buff on Hark itself, and that makes her really flexible. And on top of that, she's also one of the cheapest unit to reuse because you can use her at 1 copy. Like, she's one of those rare units that if you have her at 1 copy, you can just drop her in your team and you'll see massive boost to your team's damage in the Dream Realm side. So she's really cheap, used both in the PvP teams as well as PvE teams, and also has been meta relevant for a really long time, warranting her the 5th slot in my top 10 best units of 2024. Okay, now for the 4th slot, we have Smokey. And for Smokey's case, Smokey has always been a meta support since his release and is still super duper meta relevant, being not only just a good buffer but also a good semi DPS from the 3rd ultimate from the Smokey kit itself. So this unit has always been seeing use across multiple different game modes, be it your PvE teams as well as your bossing teams as well as your Primal Lord teams itself. So Smokey is super duper meta relevant from last time till now, and if not for Mikola's release, I'll definitely put him in the top 3, maybe even top 2, because he will be so relevant, and he's also one of those units that you build a team around, especially in the AFK stage side. So there is this Smokey pushing team which was used in the pre-season as well as most of the Song of Strife season towards the endless pushing itself, because the goal of the team was just to make sure your Smokey stays alive and make sure he channels to his 3rd ultimate, and then from there his aroma will be able to melt the whole team after you are able to reposition them with the likes of Iron Almas or even Lumon in your team itself. So this Smokey team is still relatively relevant, and you still use Smokey in most of the Mola teams as well, making this unit just really good on the AFK stage pushing side and just super duper good all around across multiple different game modes. So that's why he's definitely one of the most easily accessible as well as the longest meta longevity unit in the game with regards to the unit pool for 2024 itself. Now, moving to the third slot, right? So top 3 is probably some of the most common units that you guys see in the meta right now, because this is where we go into the most dominant units for the whole year. And starting off in the third position, we have Fausto. So, okay, if you guys see the words on the second place, the reason why Fausto is probably not higher is because one thing about Fausto was I think his potential got discovered quite late into the Song of Strife season. Like, Fausto is the king of the endgame meta, right? He's in all the Dream Realm teams on the meta level, and he's also used across multiple different teams in the PvE side as well as PvP side for your pushing as well as your PvP fights against other players itself. So this unit is also insanely flexible, being one of the best tanks in the game, one of the best DPS in the boss fights for Dream Realm, as well as insane utility in terms of the buff that he can provide, in terms of damage reduction as well as energy regen for 2 different units. So this unit is definitely up there, definitely top tier in terms of power level. But the reason why he's not in top 1 or top 2 is because this unit is more towards the end game, the late game, right? He dominates the end game, but in the early game, this unit is like, okay, you can use him, but then he's not as dominant as he should be. So that's where I think his, I'll say, like, rating drops a little bit for me, because later on, as you guys will see, the top 2 units, they are not only good, they are not only really like good for a really long time, but they're also good from the early to the late game. So that's why in that aspect, Fausto, if let's say was a lot better in the early game, he would definitely be either top 1 or top 2, right? But because of him just being like extremely good in the late game, but like okay, strong in the early game, but not so meta whopping in the early game itself, I'm gonna put him in the third slot. So that's where Fausto stands. And right, moving to the top 2 slot, I'm gonna slowly scroll through, and I think you guys probably would have guessed who's my top 2. So top 1 and top 2, I'll just review who they are. We have Lilime as well as Odie. So Odie is a unit which I think people might disagree with me, because like in the end game, in the Waves of Intrigue side, Odie is not like as dominant as compared to Fausto. So this is where we include the achievement portion, because Odie has been meta ever since his release into the game, and he's one of the earliest units in the game, and he was also one of the king of the metas where the developers actually release units just to counter his insta-kill mechanics, because if you don't, he will just kill off your whole team before you're able to do anything. So in a sense, Iron was sort of strengthened to counter Odie, because if Odie throws the ultimate, he starts killing everyone. That's where it's game over. Like, it was literally Odie versus Odie in the early days of AFK Journey, and even till today, his insta-kill mechanic is still so invaluable that you run him in even Supreme Arena teams because of the Mola fractional talent and Odie insta-kill being able to bypass it. So that's how powerful the insta-kill kit is, and Odie has been this king of the meta in the early game for all the Dream Realm contents. Like, you'll see a lot of early game teams recommending the use of Odie against the early game bosses, and despite him falling off in the endless bosses itself, you'll still see him being used across multiple different contents, be it your AFK stage pushing side, your good supremacy side, your Supreme Arena, your normal arena, as long as you have a use for his insta-kill mechanics. So this unit is definitely very meta for a long period of time, and on top of that, this unit is also insanely accessible. Like, he is one of those units you can buy with your Dream Realm shards in the Dream Realm store itself. So let's say if you're free to play, if you're low on resources, he should be and must be one of the first unit you want to max out first, because he's so easily accessible and he's so good across all the different game modes, and he's so good across the early to the late game of AFK Journey itself across different seasons, and that's why I'm giving him the number 2 spot. Okay, and to end the list off, we have top 1, and this should come as no surprise to anyone. We have Lilime right here. So Lilime is the very definition of meta warping, because she's been meta since her release in Song of Strife season, and is still meta till this date, right? She's just used across multiple different contents on the top teams across multiple different teams in your Dream Realm side, in your PvP side, and she also managed to cancel and stop Iron meta in its step with her introduction, because previously you pretty much see Iron almost in every team, right? But ever since Lily got released, you see a lot less Irons. You do see Iron around still, but then like she is the reason why Iron started to fizzle out, and that's where she builds a whole meta around her back, and that's why she's meta warping. And on top of that, I do think that she's super duper future proof, despite carries usually falling off eventually. But Lily May is one of those carries that can protect herself, start to steamroll, deal true damage, as well as cancel out people's ultimate. So I do think that she's not only going to be meta dominant for quite a bit, but also a unit that's decently future proof in terms of general usage as well. And that's why Lily May deserves the top 1 best unit of 2024. So that's it for this top 10 best units of this year. Hopefully this list is in line with most people, and let me know who's your top 10 best units of this year. And I hope you guys had a great 2024. Here's to more great 2025 moments with everyone watching this video, and I'll see you guys again in 2025. Bye guys.